Good evening. This is Alfred Hitchcock. You may be saying to yourself, why are they starting this episode of the fantastic podcast What's Your Favorite Movie with a terrible impression? And to that I say, if you've seen the dwindling download numbers of this show, it's clearly obvious that this program has always given people a terrible impression. That is comedy right there. Welcome to What's Your Favorite Movie, the podcast that asks you the question, what's your favorite movie? Bringing you top-notch comedy bits like that right there. Folks, how you doing? My name's Ed South, and thanks for joining us for another fun-filled exploration into the world of American cinema. Today, we are talking about one of the greats in all of film making time, Alfred J. Hitchcock. It is J. Alfred J. Hitchcock joining me in the studio once again, our good friend, Movie D.
Movie D.
Diana, how are you?
I'm good.
Thanks for joining us.
Is that my nickname now?
Movie D.
Nice.
Movie D. Diana, you recently watched a Hitchcock documentary and said, hey, we should do a Hitchcock show.
Yep.
And here we are doing it. But before we get into that real quick, want to remind you about our current promotion going on where we're trying to scrape together some emails to have a mailbag segment on the show. How exciting would that be? To interact with the audience via emails. So please, folks, take out your pen and paper right now. I will wait. And write down this email address, favemoviepodcast@yahoo.com. We're going to get a mailbag segment together. So again, you can tell us whatever you want. You can ask us a question, ask me, ask Diana, ask any of our friends. You can even ask Alfred Hitchcock if you want. Maybe he'll come back.
Maybe.
That would be fun. Recommend a film to us. You can tell us about a favorite movie of yours, why you love it, all that good stuff. Questions, you can tell me the show sucks. I don't care. That's fine. What you'd like to hear on the show. Do you have an idea for a topic or a list? You can send us your own list. Whatever it is, we're desperate. So just, I want to make the mailbag segment happen. If we get enough, I will even get together a new theme song for the mailbag segment.
Ooh.
It'll have its own segment, a theme song.
You should offer naming rights to
That's
to
true
someone.
too. We can do that. If you are really on top of it, let's say the first person to send us an email, it will be named. They can name the email bag segment. If you just want to name it like Mail for Ed Who's Dumb, or you want to name it like Steve's Mailbag, we can do that too, or whatever. Or if you own a business and you want to call it like United Consolidated Mailbag segment, that's fine too. So please, favemoviepodcast@yahoo.com. And as always, tell your friends, tell your folks, tell your neighbors, tell your religious leaders to tune in to What's Your Favorite Movie and share us on podcast via all your social media outlets. Diana.
Yes.
Alfred Hitchcock is a good director. He has made good movies.
He certainly had a prodigious career.
Prodigious.
Yes.
A lot of people say he's the master of horror, but he doesn't really make horror films. He has made maybe one or two that classify as a horror film.
Master of Suspense.
Master of Suspense. Define suspense for us, Diana. Webster's Dictionary says... No, I don't know what it says. Folks, if you've never seen an Alfred Hitchcock movie, you need to go to a place where movies are rented or sold and buy or rent an Alfred Hitchcock movie. You can't go wrong, really. If it's 1940...
Well, okay, I was
if
going
it's 1940 or later, you can't go wrong, really. 1940 or above, you're in for something.
Some are more watchable than others.
This is true.
But, I think they all offer something. So.
But what Diana and I have done is brought together 6, maybe, of the ones that are most watchable in our hearts and in our lives. Whatever.
Yeah.
You have different criteria.
Yeah.
But let's have some Alfred Hitchcock fun facts. Fun facts. Born Alfred Joseph Hitchcock, August 13th, 1899. His parents own a grocery store, and he was born in the flat above the store. Isn't that fascinating?
Not
especially, and you would go in and
okay.
be like, where's the frozen peas? And they would be like, number one, it's $18.99. I'm pretty sure frozen peas weren't invented yet. And number two, they would have talked like this and said, the frozen peas are in section 7. Anyway, he directed 53 feature films. By the way, folks, I didn't think that was a good Hitchcock impression. It's just one you have to do.
It wasn't bad.
If you say Catherine, Catherine Hepburn,
don't do it.
I know. I'm
don't
not.
do it. Don't do it.
I'm suppressing it.
Don't do it.
If you say Al Pacino, it might come out. Hitchcock, you got to do it. He directed 53 feature films over 6 decades. He had a successful film career in England before moving to Hollywood in March 1939. And oddly enough, he's probably most known to the general public as the host of his television show, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, from 1955 to 1965. That's what made him a celebrity himself, because he was on that show, and he was funny, and people liked it. And then he showed them people getting murdered.
Yep.
He was nominated for Best Director 5 times for Rebecca, Lifeboat, Spellbound, Rear Window, and Psycho. And he's on his films are on the National Film Registry. Do you folks know what the National Film Registry is? It is people who said, these films are good. Please look at this list and watch these movies. And films. Some of them are not movies. They're just films, pieces of film.
Right.
Historically significantly contributive to film history. Vertigo, Shadow of a Doubt, Psycho, North by Northwest, Rear Window, Notorious, and The Birds. Those are all on the National Film Registry right next to modern classics like Toy Story and Ladybugs. All right. So, right. Diana, you watched this documentary called 7852, right?
Yes.
And we're going to have to go into this show assuming you know something about the Hitchcocks, right?
Yeah, so this movie is all about the shower scene from Psycho. Well, it focuses on that, but I mean, it's really about, just Hitchcock and his movies and his style and whatever. But it kind of breaks down the shower scene. The 7852 refers to the 78 camera setups for that scene and the 52 cuts that make up the shower scene.
And it's not surprising that they made a whole film about the shower scene, because anytime you're watching anything about Hitchcock, it will divert to the shower scene, and everybody who's ever made a film will be interviewed, and 7852, the shower scene's fantastic. You never see the knife penetrate the body.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you know nothing else about Psycho, you know that there's a shower scene. So
I have seen Psycho many, many times, and every time you watch it, when it gets to the shower scene, life stands still as you watch. Like, that is just intense, non-graphic, scary, freaky-deaky stuff.
Yep.
And I remember hearing rumors when we were younger. I mean, this film, what's Psycho, 60?
Yes, 1960.
So when we were younger, that was only like within 20 years in the rearview mirror, not to be confused with another.
Right.
But I remember people saying, like, still talking about, like, being terrified to take a shower. Like, that film messed people up, messed the country up. And everybody was stinky for like 20 years because nobody would take a shower.
Yeah, I mean, Psycho is a really interesting movie because not only did it, sort of change people's literal behavior.
Right.
I don't want to take a shower anymore. But it also, I mean, it sort of changed movie audience behavior, because prior to that, like, you would buy a ticket to the movie theater and then you could just sort of come and go. And like, if you came into, the middle of a movie,
shameful,
right. You'd watch the end and then wait for the next one to start and then watch the beginning and whatever. Like, that was commonplace. People just sort of came and went during movies. Well, when Psycho came out, Hitchcock absolutely would not allow that. He said, if, once you come in, like, the doors close and you cannot come and go, you can't come in the middle. He didn't want people coming in after Janet Leigh was already dead.
You gave it away. I don't want you walking in the middle of the picture. You must see it from the get-go.
Right.
Get your popcorn and sit down and watch Psycho.
But it really did change the way that people, experience movies, because, it just did.
Right.
So it's interesting.
It is good. Did we see Psycho together
We did.
in the theater many years ago?
We
At
did.
the historic Senator Theater in Baltimore that
Yep.
we talk about many times.
Yep.
And saw it on the big screen,
Yep.
and Janet Leigh
Was
spoke,
there. Yep.
right? And she
Yep.
spoke. We
Yep.
did not meet Janet Leigh.
No, we didn't meet, but
her.
we saw her.
We
and
saw
she,
her speak, and she was very...
She did her handprints in the sidewalk outside.
cement. It's just still
Yep.
there,
Yep.
which is cool.
Yep.
So that was like 96, 7, 8, something like that.
I don't recall the year, but yeah,
She was nice.
Yes.
What did she say?
I don't remember.
She talked about being afraid to take a shower. Did somebody interview her, famous, or it was just like Joe Schmo from Baltimore interviewed her? Or was it...
I don't remember who else was there, if anyone, but...
So there's lots of good Hitchcock films, and Diana... So you didn't necessarily pick your favorites. You've picked 3 that you want to shine the spotlight on.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I find them, significant for various reasons, and, some are harder to find than others, but, if you're able to find all of these, I feel like these are 3 that you should seek out.
I looked up just the other day, like yesterday, Hitchcock on the cable app to see what films were showing over the next couple of weeks or whatever, and Turner Classic shows them a lot, but right now almost his whole catalog is available on Starz on demand. So if you subscribe to the Starz service and enjoy watching, I don't know what shows are on Starz.
no idea.
But if you enjoy 97 screenings of The Rock in the Game Plan a week, you might also enjoy some Hitchcock films on Starz on demand. So go ahead, Dinah, and tell us your first film on your list. I would imagine anybody's best list is going to be... If you could ask like 100 film critics the 5 best Hitchcock films, almost everyone's going to have the same 4 and then one like added in for their own personal touch.
Right,
but
yeah.
You're going to break convention. Go ahead. What's your number 1 spot?
All right, so my first pick is Blackmail from 1929.
Whoa. What a film nerd.
Yeah, exactly. This is a super film nerdy pick, and I'm recommending it not really because of the content of the film, but because this was a movie that began production as a silent film, and then during the production, it was changed to a sound film. So the first half of the movie is... there's no talking, and then all of a sudden, it turns into a talkie. It's the weirdest thing. But I feel like, it's so straight. Like, if you're a film nerd...
Right.
and you like to see weird stuff like that, you should...
And this was Britain's first talking film
that
after
is correct.
America's The Jazz Singer.
Right, yeah. This was a couple of years after The Jazz Singer, and it's generally regarded as Britain's first sound feature film.
So in the film, is there some kind of... construct? Is there some kind of thing why it becomes sound, or it's just
not
like,
that I recall? I mean,
no, it just starts talking?
yeah, exactly.
That's weird.
It really is. It's super weird.
Like a lot of movies have a reason to be half black and white, half color. Like,
right? No. There's. I mean, and it's funny because it's like when I saw this movie, it hadn't really consciously occurred to me that there wasn't a lot of talking. Like,
right.
I just wasn't really thinking about it. And then when they do start talking, I was just like, wait a minute.
So it's scored. It's got music and sound effects, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
Does it have title cards in the beginning parts? With the...
It's been so long since I've seen it.
Yeah.
I don't recall. Probably there are some. I don't remember. But
and what's it about, Diana?
I mean, roughly it's
about blackmail,
right? A woman who is, I don't remember.
She blackmailed and then she starts talking.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There you go. The end.
But it's interesting. Yeah, like they would just. It was probably they were so excited to get a sound picture out that it was just like, okay, now you have sound,
right,
whatever,
yeah.
and then. Good. Everybody come closer. This guy is holding a microphone. You're going to be talking now, and I'm also doing a Lorne Michaels impression. So what do you know about that?
This film is actually also significant, sort of, because it features the longest of Hitchcock's on-screen cameos. He appears in this movie for about half a minute.
Wow.
Which is the longest period that you see him on the screen.
For those of you not in the know, it's time for What's Your Favorite Movies in the Know. He cameos cameos in every movie, has a little tiny cameo somewhere. And it got to the point where he had to get them in early in the film because everybody was so waiting for it that he felt it was distracting from the story he wanted to tell. So a lot of them, it happens really quick. Yeah. So, okay, this is a nice lengthy one. He's kind of the Stan Lee of the old days, folks, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
What year is Blackmail?
1929.
1929. And it's Mail, M-A-I-L, not M-A-L-E, that I just wrote down in my notes here.
Correct.
Oh. And that's a little thing that happens in podcast land where people's cell phones go off. And you pretend it didn't happen. What?
What happened?
What happened?
What are you talking about?
It was an odd occurrence. All right. So, for my list, I also picked 3 that I want to point out and favorites. But I got to say, you would think Ed's going to pick, like, Hitchcock's The Cat Who Knew Too Much or The Dog Who Murdered Someone. But my favorite Hitchcock film is Psycho.
Is it?
Loves me some Psycho. Now, what's up with that? Because if I were to, let's just say I was to make a list of my 30 favorite films. Not that I've ever sat down with a piece of paper and pen and done that, but if I did, most of them are comedies. Almost all of them are comedies, but Psycho is definitely on my list. Psycho is a good stinking movie. And I wonder if, I was trying to think of why I like it so much. It might be that it's one of the earlier times and one of the few times where I've allowed a serious film to enter my aura and I'm blown away by it because it's so damned good.
Well, it's interesting too because he didn't really necessarily intend it all that seriously.
Right.
He intentionally made it to look like a cheap exploitation film.
Right.
So, it's interesting that that's your pick for like serious movie because he didn't really mean it as a serious movie.
If you go on YouTube, you can find the original trailer. It's on the DVDs too and everything. The original trailer is actually hilarious. Like it's a straight up comedy. He's just goofing around and having fun on the set of Psycho. But yeah, I just love this movie. It's so, every time I watch it, like in the first minute or two, I'm like, oh, I forgot how good this is. And I'm like totally mesmerized for 90 or whatever minutes it is. I just watched it a few months ago with my son, introduced it to him. He loved it. It's awesome.
It's definitely compelling. But it makes it, that much more interesting when, you kind of look at it, historically from, going from his previous films, which were, North by Northwest and whatever, these big Technicolor, cinematic affairs to this, small scaled down black and white, exploitation film.
Right.
Basically, it's really interesting.
And he wanted to do something a little simpler and not have the big flashy stars and the big, action set pieces or whatever. He actually filmed this with his TV crew. So this was almost made as an episode of the TV show, a longer episode. And I was also just reading, he, instead of taking his usual salary of $250,000, he took 60% of the film's net profits. So he made over $15 million on this film back in the 60s, which adjusted now would be over $150 million. That's a lot of steaks. I don't know what that means. But you guys know the story, and if you've never seen it, you should watch it. It is a fantastic film. It holds up. The beginning, you got to pay attention to kind of get the gist of what's going on, but then it rocks and it rolls, and it's good stuff, right?
Good stuff.
I also wanted to talk about on the show real quick, the Universal Studios the Universal Studios in Florida used to have an attraction called Alfred Hitchcock: The Art of Making Movies. That was there from 1990 and 2003. And this was a super, super cool, but also had some very bizarre elements in it. But you went in the first part and you watched a movie that was a compilation of clips of Hitchcock's films. Just, standard fare, whatever. Just a lot of quick, short clips and whatnot, all the iconic scenes and whatnot. And then at one point, they told you to put on the 3D glasses. They actually have Hitchcock telling you. They give you 3D glasses, you put on the 3D glasses, and they show you a scene of Dial M for Murder, which was his 3D movie that he made. And there's a famous scene where the hand reaches for the phone or something, and there's a knife or scissors, or I don't remember, whatever. So you have the 3D glasses on, so you're watching it. And then as that scene is going on, you start to hear like some noises, and the screen starts rumbling, and there's little like slits in the screen come out, and of course it's in 3D, so it looks more real, and a bird flies out of the screen and flies out over the audience, and then a couple more, and then pretty soon the whole screen falls down, and the whole wall is actually a movie screen, and it's like thousands of birds come flying through the theater. So that was a really cool effect. I remember that from like, I was like 17 when I saw it, and still remember that. And then you would go into the next room, and there was a live stage show of the shower scene from Psycho. And they would get somebody out of the audience and put him in a bathrobe and put a little shower cap on their head, and they would show how they filmed the scene in a comical, delightful way with, the 37 stab wounds in it and everything. And then you went out back, and there's another Hitchcock movie called Rear Window about Jimmy Stewart witnessing a murder,
Yes.
what he believes to be a murder, with his binoculars. So they had this thing where you stood, and there was all these binoculars, and way across like an opening, there was a cityscape with windows with high-def TVs in it, and you used the binoculars and tried to find the murderer. It was kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Then they tore it out and replaced it with Shrek, and that's not even a joke, and that's completely 1,000% a wrap-up of Hollywood today. Anyway. Number 3 on our list, Diana.
All right, so next on my list, you just mentioned it, Dial M for Murder.
Dial M for Murder. Have you seen it in 3D?
I've never seen it in 3D, sadly, but this is a movie that, I don't know, I just really like it. It's not your typical whodunit because you already know who did it, but it's really suspenseful because, you're just like, all right, what is he going to get away with? And who's going to figure this out when? And, whatever. It kind of, like, toward the end, it starts to kind of break down a little bit because it's just so unbelievable, but whatever, I really like this movie. So yeah, 1954. It was shot in 3D, but...
Which is all the craze at the time.
Well, that's the thing. By the time it screened, it really wasn't a craze, and it screened almost exclusively in 2D.
Flat.
Yeah, so by 1954 standards, I mean, 3D was, very difficult. There were lots of projection issues and whatever. So even though it was shot in 3D, nobody really saw it in 3D until it was re-released in 1982.
And now my wife is on my case because in our garage is 45 cases of 3D glasses that I can't get rid of.
Right. So, yeah.
Dial M for Murder. That is one that I have not seen besides the little clip. Yeah, I know. I need to rectify that.
Yes, you definitely need to watch this. Now, in case anyone is thinking about... So this movie was remade in 1998 as A Perfect Murder. In case you're thinking about watching that instead of Dial M for Murder, please...
I guess it didn't work. Go ahead.
Please do yourself a favor and skip A Perfect Murder and just watch Dial M for Murder.
As always.
Yeah.
Who was in A Perfect Murder?
So that was Michael Douglas and Gwyneth Paltrow.
Ooh.
Yeah, and Viggo Mortensen. Please just skip that.
But... Can you imagine watching Gwyneth Paltrow steam clean her privates in 3D? All right, moving on. Moving on my list, I'm going to go with 1955 film, The Trouble with Harry. Are you familiar with The Trouble with Harry?
I've never seen that one.
Surprise, surprise. It is extremely humorous, but I love this movie. Trouble with Harry is a little small New England town, and someone is murdered, and they find the body, and everybody has a different... Well, the first person... the body keeps getting found, and it keeps getting moved because the person that finds it freaks out in one way or another.
Right.
So this whole movie is about this poor dead body being shuffled all over town and hidden and, getting the cops to come, and it's not there, and then it turns up somewhere else, and people find it over and over again. And it's very dark humor, which is what Hitchcock liked. One of his favorite films, he said at one time.
See, I should have included that one in our list of 10 films where being dead is hilarious.
Hilarious, that is true. But
I think I looked at it, but then decided no.
He's a corpse. Yeah, Harry doesn't talk. Right. This is more in the vein of Weekend at Bernie's. Right. Dead people are funny. John Forsythe, Shirley MacLaine in her film debut, and Edmund Gwynn, who played Santa Claus in Miracle Before Christmas and Miracle on 34th Street. So good times for that. So yeah, you should check that out. And that is on Turner Classic quite often. It's very funny, but very macabre. It fits in his je ne sais quoi film. He has another film from 1941 called Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is a straight up comedy, like a screwball comedy, and it's not I don't think anybody dies in it. It's about a couple that find out they're not married. There you go. But Hitchcock was funny also. What else you got for us, Diana? Movie D?
Movie D. So next on my list is Torn Curtain.
Torn Curtain.
From 1966.
66.
Yep. So this was Hitchcock's 50th film. It stars Paul Newman and Julie Andrews.
Nice.
And it's all about Cold War intrigue.
So this was kind of right off the heels of Mary Poppins for Ms. Andrews.
Yeah, it was. But I like this movie. It's a little bit different from, a lot of his earlier films just because, like the whole spy thriller thing. I mean, he'd kind of done that a little bit with North by Northwest and whatever, but it's an interesting movie. It's often people talk about it because of the long death scene that happens. Where, Paul Newman's character is trying to kill someone who has, discovered him as a double agent or whatever, and it takes forever to kill this man. It takes forever, and it's hard to watch.
It takes forever for him to kill the man,
right.
Or it's like a very dramatic death scene where he's
he's trying to, to strangle him to death, and it just takes forever. It's a lot more realistic than a lot of movie death scenes where, especially strangulation scenes where, as soon as like the hands go around the neck, the person's dead, which that's not how it works. So
this guy's like being strangled in real time.
Pretty much, and it goes on and on and on.
I can see Hitch like loving that, like just laughing, like this is hilarious.
But otherwise, it's an interesting movie. I guess it got a lot of criticism for being kind of slow and boring, but I don't know, I liked it. So,
it's interesting though, really in hindsight, is that Paul Newman himself is now dead for real. So it really makes you think.
Does it?
It's like some foreshadowing.
Sure.
Who does he strangle?
Gromek. I don't know who the actor was.
I wonder if that guy's dead.
Probably.
Julie Andrews is still with us.
Yes, she is.
That's interesting. So good time. So that is, what year was that?
1966.
So that was right before the ratings kicked in. So that's still like a kind of a PG feel to it. There's no...
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
And there's no dancing penguins in it, right?
There are no dancing penguins.
No dancing penguins. On my list, my third favorite, which I went with a deep cut, if you will, Foreign Correspondent, 1940. This is a straight up serious Hitchy movie about an American reporter attempting to expose enemy agents in London on the eve of World War II. Ooh. Yes, that does not sound super exciting or thrilling, but this is that's why he's a great director, because he takes things that you might not necessarily care about or just heavy duty subject matter and make it a fascinating twisty turny movie. I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen this in a while, but it stuck out when I looked at his filmography. Right. That still stuck out as like one that I really love, Foreign Correspondent, which is also on Stars right now, and I don't even know who's, like, Joel McCrea is in it and Lorraine Day. I don't know who they are for. Okay. My wife would like to talk to us. So
evidently.
Probably me. Tell us about Tippi Hedren and Hitchcock and the bad things that Hitchcock did. He was not a woke fellow, was he?
It would seem not, no.
Tippi Hedren was in The Birds.
Right, which we've talked about before on this podcast.
Yes.
And we failed to mention when we talked before about Tippi that she was in Marnie, which I actually just recently watched.
Did you like it?
I liked it, but it's a super disturbing movie, and especially in light of what she what Tippi later said about, her relationship with Hitchcock. Apparently he was, he harassed her quite a lot. He, I don't know.
I had a problem with boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. He was trying to control her personal life. And she said after that she would never work with him again. And so when you watch Marnie, which is about, so Sean Connery is in that with Tippi Hedren. His character, really like manipulates and controls her. And it's really hard to watch now, knowing the kind of relationship that she in real life was having with Hitchcock at the time. It's disturbing. It really is.
Oh, Hitch. And he did some crazy things on the birds, too, to her, right? Like, locked her in a room with birds. You didn't read that?
Oh, I don't.
He, locked her in a room with real birds and, just made her terrified of the birds or whatever to get look, I'm just doing my job, okay? I mean, it shows just, how the thinking was back then. Women were still, second-class citizens completely to, Hitchcock was, not just Hitchcock, but, I'm making a movie, now get in this room with a bunch of birds.
Right.
And that's gross.
Yeah.
Birds not that great, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Drags.
It does.
And there's lots of birds coming, so it kind of,
yeah.
But hey, it's all good. I would say if you got older kids and you're going to introduce them to Hitchcock, I would say Psycho's the way to go.
Would you?
That's the tightest and easiest to get into. All the others have long opening parts. Vertigo is really solid. Mm-hmm. That takes a while to get rolling. Rear Window is kind of dry and slow for kids, but I would go Vertigo.
Yeah, I feel like all of his films are kind of problematic at points.
Right.
Like North by Northwest, has some amazing scenes, but then there's also lots of just weirdness and, draggy parts and whatever. Yeah, It
was a sign of the times.
Yeah.
It was a different time. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Sure.
All right. So that is our brief but fun look into the world of Alfred J. Hitchcock, and you should watch some films of his if you have not seen them.
And definitely look up the documentary, 7852. I think right now it's on Hulu. I don't know where else it's available.
There's also a movie where Anthony Hopkins played Hitchcock in a film recently, and what's her name? Scarlett Johansson, I believe, was Tippi Hedren, maybe? Or maybe he was his wife. I don't know. She was in it.
I don't know.
She's good.
She's good.
Folks, don't forget our mailbag segment, favemoviepodcast.com. Tell us your favorite Hitchcock film. Tell us your first experience with Hitchcock. Did you meet him? He only died in 80, so maybe. If you met Hitchcock, you're not listening to this Dog and Pony Show. I can tell you that much right now. And all that other good stuff. Twitter at WYF Movie Podcast. At Ed South, if you want to follow me and hear my stupid thoughts on a variety of subjects, from Alf to politics, follow me on Twitter at Ed South. And as always, share the show. Diana, thank you so much for joining us. In the many times that you've done this show, I have never locked you in a room with birds.
Nope, not yet.
Or with bad movies. No. I have made you watch bad movies.
Yeah, it's happened before. Not recently, but...
And not forced.
No, not really.
Coerced, maybe.
A little bit, yeah.
It's all good. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We hope you'll join us again real soon. Until then, it's khaki wishes and cookie dreams. Bye-bye.